We're talking today to a very interesting visitor to the University of Oxford. Patrea Pabst is from the United States, and she qualified first as a biologist and then as a lawyer. And she's now what is called a patent attorney, working in the United States. And what patent attorneys do is to advise people who have discovered new things, new ways of doing things, new facts about the world, to protect their intellectual property. Now, have I got it correct, Patrea, that that's roughly what a patent is for? Or can you tell us what it's really for?
Patents are issued by a government, whether it's the United States, where it's the European Patent Office, to take and provide a period of time in which a party has the right to exclude competition from making, using, or selling that which is defined by the patent. The purpose of patents are a trade. You tell me how to do something, and in exchange, you get a period of exclusivity. In the real world, where you spend a great deal of time, effort, and money to discover and then develop technology, whether it's a new drug, whether it's a new cell phone, it doesn't really matter. The point is that most of the things you try will not work. The few that do will be marketed, and you need to be able to recover the cost of all of that discovery and development, or the technology is never developed. We see this in my field, primarily in the life sciences, in pharmaceutical, biotechnology, and medical devices, where you not only have a very, very high rate of failure, but you also have extremely high costs because of the need for regulatory approval. So if you cannot get some of that money back, it does not happen. Yes. Interestingly enough, in the United States, where we have higher prices on medicine, we have a lot of insurance to cover cost, we don't have socialized medicine. We have a lot of research and development in the medical field. Yeah. When I compare that to countries where there's socialized medicine, where there's lower reimbursement, in third world countries where there is no reimbursement, as much as they can hardly pay for it, we don't see development. So when you look at who does all the invention, it is those countries that reward invention the most, that do the most inventing, and they give the greatest leaps in technology because they can get the resources to pay for it.
Now that takes me to the next question that I wanted to put to you, which is this. I've experienced, as a medical scientist myself, both the United States and Europe, and of course countries elsewhere in the world. And I noticed something very interesting, which is when I look at the CV of many of my colleagues in the United States, they will have a long list of patents. You will not usually find that so often amongst people in the United Kingdom. That fits more or less with what you're saying? I think it does, doesn't it?
It does.
In other words, you're saying that the creation of an environment of regulation in which there can be reward for new discovery, which may have taken a huge investment to create in the first place, creates the context and the culture in which those discoveries will get to be both made and patented.
Yes. What we see in the United States in particular is we have a lot of work done at the university level, a lot of very basic, what I call nonprofit research. The universities kind of fall into what I call two categories. There are the ones like MIT and Harvard and Yale and Johns Hopkins and Stanford, where they have an aggressive licensing program. They use that technology to get partners, to get licenses, to take and do startup companies in order to actually see that technology develop. Rarely will a university actually invest in a technology. Most of them do, however, take equity in the startup companies.
Yes.
And that provides a means to take that very early stage technology through development, because you've got to have the resources to do it. So the universities, most of them that are doing it have, of course, income coming in from patents, since all the universities retain a portion of those proceeds to take and fund the intellectual property. Most universities also take a portion of it to go back to the department that sponsored the research, as well as they give some back to the actual
stakeholder.
Everybody's a stakeholder.
Gets a reward from the exploitation of a particular discovery through the patent system. And that's what motivates people. Is that roughly correct?
I think it's the opposite. These people want the technology developed. They want to make a difference. Yeah. I know when people come to me, the first thing I say is, so who cares? What is this long-standing but unmet need? Yeah. What is the problem you're trying to solve? Because usually it's very early stage. So you don't always know what they see happening 5, 10, 15 years in the future. And that is the time frame for most, certainly in the medical and life sciences. It's long-term. So you see this goal based on very early stage technology. So yes, there is a financial reward if the licensing group at the university is good, if the researcher has connections with parties who say, okay, this is somebody who's developed in the past. You have a large group of universities that do not do well on licensing, and you won't see a lot of patents on those CVs. Patents are expensive. One of the things I suggest to people for the cheap or free intellectual property, and there's quite a bit actually, is copyright, trademark, domain names, trade secret, and know-how. Know-how and trade secrets are incredibly valuable. One of the downsides of patents is that not only are they limited in term, which is 20 years from when you file, so in the medical world, you may not have a product out there till 5 years before this patent expires. One reason why costs are so high initially, but then when it comes off patent, the prices drop. They're trying to recover as much for not only the cost of that drug and the development, but those ones that fail. But you also see people, when they put together a deal to develop and license this, they want to tie into the researchers. They want the know-how. They want the trade secrets. For example, suppose you start testing things and you build this incredible database, and every day you're doing research, you're adding to that database. You would never patent that. The value comes from the database. You keep it as a trade secret, you keep it as know-how. You're not going to publish that work. At the universities, people publish. Critically important to be able to publish. Our job as a patent attorney is to make sure we file before they...
Because you have to do so before it's out in the public domain, otherwise you can't patent.
It's a trade.
Yes.
You tell me how to do something, I give you a period of exclusivity. If you give it away first, you gave it away, and it will not be developed.
No, indeed, that's right. Yes, exactly. Now I come to a very interesting question, which I think will be a question that will be of concern to everybody concerned with healthcare around the world. I'm going to take a particular example where I want to suggest that the patent problem or the patent solution to exploitation may not help us, but this is a challenge to you, isn't it? And it's antibiotics. Now, we're facing a dilemma, which is that the bacteria are beginning to win.
Yes.
And we're getting increasingly resistance to antibiotics in bacteria. And if that grows over the next few years, we have the nightmare situation in which we're back to where we were 60, 70 years ago before antibiotics were readily available. Now, the health implications of that are enormous. Now, the dilemma is this. Who is going to invest in a drug, antibiotic, which ideally you should use for only a week, you should use only very rarely, and the payback in terms, therefore, of the kinds of drugs which get used all the time, like using antibiotics in farming, for example, doesn't seem to be there. Does this mean that for some kinds of novelty, of new development, it requires society, or governments, if you like, to come in and make sure it happens and provide the financial incentives for it to happen? How do you, as a patent attorney, look at a problem like that, where it looks initially, at least, as though the standard patent route might not work? Or have I got that wrong?
I think you got it wrong. Okay.
Good.
So,
I learned.
Actually, it's more applicable to things like vaccines, where there's high risk and low return. Vaccines need government support, or they don't happen, for the most part.
Okay.
But in something like antibiotics, in fact, what happens now is you have doctors, they overprescribe penicillin, tetracycline, and now they're even C4. They're beginning to do a lot more of the ones that are designed to address the resistance problem. But doctors always err on the side of prevention. Well, better to give that antibiotic in case.
Yeah.
Better to prevent than to come back and try to treat, particularly in small children,
Yes.
where they get so sick so quickly. But what happens in the case of drug development is when you have this problem, personalized medicine is the same kind of thing,
Yes.
where you have a better solution, it's cost related.
Right.
Because the market is smaller, the price is higher.
Yes.
The price is simply proportional to the market.
The market, yes.
You know?
Yes.
Who
right.
would have ever thought that you could bottle water and sell it? Okay? Great example of something most of us never thought there was a need for, certainly not patentable, and they've made a fortune, and they continue to do so. They trademark and design patent the bottles, but the point is, the whole basic concept is something for which nobody ever thought there was a need or that you could make any money.
Right.
People are very creative. They know how to make money. But what they do is, in something like that, where the overhead is low, they make the money with a small profit margin on a big volume.
Yes.
When you have a small market and you have a lot of overhead,
Yes.
you have to raise the
yes.
price.
So you think that somehow the market forces will sort this one out?
I think if the government stays out of it,
Yes.
the market will sort it out.
I see.
And you will see people who did the discovery, who did the work, recover their expenses because of the patents. And as it goes off patent, the cost will go down.
Yes, okay.
I see personalized medicine being in that same category because by definition, it's a small market, but it's going to be much more expensive. Now, having said that, that may not be true. Let me give you an example. If you take your antibiotic resistance, if you have somebody that has multiple resistant staph infection, for example, very, very expensive to treat today because you don't have the drugs. You have vancomycin. Look at a drug, old drug, last resort, people use something like that. They have to hospitalize, they have to treat with a lot of drug. The cost of treating the drug-resistant infection is very, very high.
It's huge, yes.
If you have a drug that can come in, slam it down in a week, even better if you can do it at home, the cost, even if the drug is high, the cost is low.
Yes, I see. So actually, therefore, you're saying that by comparison with the cost of not getting new antibiotics, which is that there's hospitalization for long periods of time, that by comparison with the cost of that, actually the market will produce something that is cost effective.
Yes.
Yes. That's very interesting. In fact, the whole of this conversation, Patrea, is very interesting, and I hope our viewers will find so too. But I've got one final question to you. What's brought you to Oxford and to this lovely university town?
Vacation. I just wanted.
So just flying in and flying out again?
Well, I'm going to the Cotswolds. I'm actually going to be here for the Crufts Dog Show. I have a dog showing there.
Right, okay.
But a couple of the people that work in my office went to Oxford. They made an introduction, so here I am.
So here you are because there are colleagues who know about Oxford and the great treasures we have here.
And I've got to say, it's a fabulous school. And when I look at the two people who work in my office, they're so well prepared. They're so good at what they do. Very impressive.
Well, after all, this is where antibiotics were first used.
I didn't
Oxford.
realize that.
Yes, that's right. During World War II, the antibiotics were first used in St Hugh's College here in the University of Oxford by Florey and Chain to treat badly wounded soldiers, and they succeeded.
That's
of course,
fascinating.
it was infection was the problem.
Oh, of course.
And of course, that's what created most of the casualties in war. It's not the injury itself, but the subsequent development after the injury. So we're the home of antibiotics.
I understand that now.
And we didn't patent it. Anyway, thank you very much, Patrea Pabst, for talking to us, and enjoy your visit to Oxford.
Thank you so much. It's my pleasure.